All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something seriously wild. We're going to do a bit of a thematic autopsy on, well, one of the most chilling neurolinguistic disasters you'll probably ever hear about. It's this incredible story where cutting-edge, sci-fi level technology violently collides with the absolute purest forms of human art. We're talking ambition, stolen talent, and the terrifying breaking limits of the human mind. So grab a seat and get comfortable, because we are unpacking the deeply tragic case of Julian and the infamous sync mesh incident. So I want you to picture this. You're sitting alone in a dark, high-rise apartment in the futuristic city of New Neo-Vienna. Right before the download sequence actually kicks in, you get this really sharp metallic tang in the back of your mouth. It's like the copper taste of ozone. And that right there, that is the visceral, physical taste of stolen genius. As the text puts it, he hadn't just bought their skills, he had dragged their ghosts into his skull. You have to understand, this wasn't just downloading a PDF of sheet music into your brain, no way. This was ripping the raw, autonomous essence of dead masters straight off the black market and shoving it directly into a living, breathing neural network.
Which honestly brings us to this massive, philosophical dilemma where tech meets art. Ask yourself, would you download a genius if it meant risking your own memories? Seriously, if you could just snap your fingers and instantly acquire the exact muscle memory, the emotional syntax, the complete cognitive mapping of the greatest artists in human history, bypassing literally decades of blood, sweat, and crushing failure, would you do it? And what if the price for that ultimate shortcut was your very identity? Keep that in the back of your mind as we go, because the main takeaway of this explainer is why that exact choice matters so much. Let's take a look at a guy who actually answered yes to that terrifying question.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1. The price of genius, and the temptation of a shortcut to mastery.
Meet our subject, Julian. Now, by pretty much all objective accounts, Julian was, well, he was a thoroughly mediocre cellist. He totally had all the vanity of a virtuoso, the expensive tailored suits, the burning, desperate desire to be a great artist, but he severely lacked the actual raw talent. His fingers were just stubborn. His rhythm was always just a tiny fraction of a beat behind the truth. And since he was completely unwilling to put in the grueling, painful hours of a true master, he went looking for the ultimate illicit shortcut. Enter the sync mesh. Picture this sleek, multi-pronged neural cradle that physically attaches right to the base of your skull, humming with this low, eerie violet light. Julian used this piece of hardware to pull off an absolutely insane neural splice. He didn't just download one persona, which would be risky enough. He seamlessly spliced the profound, thunderous late-period genius of Ludwig van Beethoven with the fluid, improvisational dynamics of a 21st century jazz prodigy who had tragically died in obscurity. Overnight, Julian became this vessel, instantly capable of playing a grand piano with a terrifying, breathtaking brilliance.
But here's the catch. The so-called miracle of the sync mesh deteriorates into a literal psychological infection almost immediately. It essentially follows 4 brutal steps. Step 1 is skill acquisition. That's the initial rush of artificial vertigo and feeling like an absolute god. Then comes Step 2, personality bleed. This is where, say, Julian's left hand just violently rebels and slams discordant notes, simply because the ghost of Beethoven is actively disgusted by Julian's lack of discipline. Next is Step 3, memory overwrite, where the host's actual mind starts being physically dismantled to make room. And finally, Step 4, complete identity erasure. Let's actually look at exactly how Julian's mind spiraled from Step 2 right into Step 3.
Which brings us to Section 2, Ghosts in the Machine. The internal bandwidth war begins.
So, when these conflicting personalities inside his head suddenly demanded control, Julian totally panicked. He just ripped the sync mesh device right off the back of his neck, thinking, the disconnect would plunge him safely back into his comfortable, uninspired solitude. But that was a huge mistake. Without the external dampeners of that hardware acting as a safety net, the firewall between Julian's fragile ego and the downloaded engrams just dissolved entirely. These weren't dormant data files anymore. They were hyper-concentrated clusters of pure obsession and towering genius, completely awake and fully trapped inside a finite human mind. And to make matters infinitely worse, this wasn't Julian's first time using the device. This was his 7th major acquisition this month alone. 7! He had completely and utterly overloaded his system. His mental interior instantly transformed into this frantic, terrifying battleground. I mean, every single time he looked at an everyday object, his brain tried to interpret it in multiple different ways at once, literally tearing his sensory perception apart.
And these imprints were physically fighting over Julian's motor cortex. Think about it. On one side, you've got the deaf classical master, Beethoven. His thoughts are grinding together like tectonic plates. He views the entire world as strict mathematical fugues, demanding rigid discipline, and like 18 hours of scales a day just to hammer the music deep into the bone. Then on the exact opposite side, you have the jazz prodigy. He smells of stale tobacco and cheap wine, and he's demanding loose blues progressions, fluid dynamics, pure unadulterated emotion. He just wants to flip the time signatures and let the rhythm breathe. Oh, and quietly observing this massive lore is a third imprint, an aristocratic Renaissance lutenist who just views music as this delicate, devotional hymn. You have these completely opposed aesthetic philosophies going to all-out war inside one guy's head.
Let's move into Section 3, the Symphony of Chaos, the ultimate breakdown at the Grand Gala.
Now, Julian fully realized he was losing his mind, right? So he desperately tried to boot up his terminal to run a darknet overwrite protocol. Basically, a psychic bleach to clear his mental cache and save his life. But his own hands rebelled against him. His left hand stiffened up to conduct this invisible downbeat, while his right hand started tapping out imaginary polyrhythms. The ghosts realized he was trying to erase them, and over 3 agonizing days, they struck back hard. Day 1, the firewall dissolves completely. By day 2, the ghosts are actively rewriting Julian's synaptic topology. They need raw building materials to accommodate their massive, towering intellects, so what do? They start tearing down Julian's own memories. He forgets the smell of his mother's cooking, he forgets the layout of his childhood streets, his first girlfriend. His actual life is overwritten with 1800s Viennese dampness and speakeasy gin. And by day 3, we arrive at the Grand Gala performance. See, months ago, riding high on his stolen talents, Julian booked the Symphony Hall of New Neo-Vienna for what was supposed to be his grand coronation. But now, it's literally his execution.
When Julian actually steps out onto that stage, the mere presence of the audience acts like this feral catalyst. These ghosts have been suffocating inside him, and that applause, that is pure oxygen. This quote from the Beethoven imprint really captures the sheer, terrifying dominance of what's happening. "We are the eternal flame. You are nothing but a guttering candle trying to blow us out. We will not be silenced again." Julian sits down at the grand piano, and his left hand just launches into the heavy, thunderous opening chords of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, demanding absolute, rigid obedience from the entire New Neo-Vienna Symphony Orchestra sitting behind him.
But instantly, almost without missing a beat, the jazzman fully hijacks the right hand. "Your architecture is a prison, old man. Break the walls down. If we're going down swinging." That's what he's screaming in Julian's mind. The right hand flies into this blindingly fast, syncopated bebop run, just tearing through the classical structure like a literal chainsaw through silk. I mean, picture this scene for a second. The conductor freezes. The audience is absolutely paralyzed in horror. Julian is completely trapped behind his own eyes, sweating profusely, blood trickling from his nose, while his fingers are blurring at impossible speeds. It is a terrifying sonic storm of rage and grief. The jazz icon throws the time signature into a dizzying 7/8 meter, shattering that classical composition into 1,000 tiny pieces. It is a public battlefield of sound.
And finally, we reach Section 4, the silence of Julian and the philosophical aftermath.
So, under all this intense pressure, the delicate Renaissance lutenist is the very first casualty. His quiet, courtly presence just dissolves. With a sigh that sounds almost like a dying string, his memories and techniques are sucked right into the raging vortex of the other two, and Julian actually feels a piece of his own brain go permanently dark. Then, the music reaches this howling, impossible wall of sound. Beethoven gathers every single ounce of his monumental will for one final crushing strike, and the jazzman throws his entire essence into the counterattack. They collide with the force of 2 collapsing stars. But the crazy thing is, instead of one of them winning, the sheer, violent pressure of their hatred forces a catastrophic systemic failure. Their personalities melt into this monstrous, unrecognizable static, and in their final death throes, they drag Julian's fragile, mediocre soul right into the blender with them.
Out on the stage, the music stops instantly. Julian's hands just freeze right above the keys. Blood is dripping onto his black lapel. The war inside his skull is finally over, but what's left is essentially a vast, silent ballroom. A piano with absolutely no strings left to play. Julian's head tilts to the side with this incredibly vacant smile that belongs to no one at all. He simply lifts his right hand, and his fingers start tapping the empty air in this slow, permanent, completely meaningless loop. He's been reduced to a broken meat computer, just listening to a silence that will never, ever end. All of which leaves us with this final, really lingering thought. Can true art actually exist without the struggle of learning it? Or is the human soul fundamentally defined by the journey itself? Think about it. Julian wanted the ultimate destination without taking the journey. He wanted the raw genius without the 18 hours of daily scales, without the heartache and the pain of the blues. And in stealing the destination, he completely and permanently erased the traveler. It is a truly terrifying reminder of the organic, fragile nature of our own identity. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it leaves you thinking deeply about the true cost of shortcuts in life, and I hope you're hungry to dive in and learn even more. Catch you next time.